Good morning, y'all. I'm here today with Legal Smiths, and I got some great news to share. We went yesterday to the Orange County Public Accountability hearing, and lo and behold, we got them to put some of the items that weren't on the agenda by voicing public opinion. This goes to show you how strong the words of the community can be. It goes to show you what we can actually do when we come together. And so I have fantastic news to share with y'all. After a lot of public pressure, we have gotten Mayor Demings to agree that he is going to put the IGSA, the Intergovernmental Service Agreement with ICE, back on the agenda. He's going to let the county board members take a look at it, make their decisions, ask their questions, and vote. And that is a victory because we have been asking for that thing to get back on the agenda for months. So take a look at some of our members, what they had to say, and how we were able to do this. And a big shout out to the local 50501, 5051, to the Immigrants Are Welcome Here Coalition, to the farm workers, to everybody who has helped put this thing together. And the biggest congrats to the community members. Y'all really came and showed out. Thank you so much for your support.
From other counties in some instances, and a lot of instances without actual criminal record. And we are using Orange County tax dollars to pay them.
And I'm here today to speak for the migrants in our community because this mistreatment is not okay.
Human decency in general, demanding that the commission terminate their IGSA agreement.
1936, my great-grandma, Erna Nikolaus, was dragged out of her house by the Gestapo. They ransacked the house. My great-great-grandmother was sitting in the corner crying. And when my grandfather came home from school that day, his mom was missing. No one knew what happened to her. My great-grandma was put in the Ravensbrück concentration camp in Germany, an all-women's concentration camp. My grandpa then went on to grow up and miss his mother completely from his childhood. I'm here today to speak for the migrants in our community. We are tearing families apart. Children are at school and they don't know what happened to their mothers. We don't know where some of these people went. People are missing. And so I'm speaking out against the IGSA. Please stop and terminate this contract. We have due process. We cannot repeat history. We got to do better than that. Thank you.
I'm here to talk about two issues today, the IGSA agreement, the memorandum accepting that agreement, as well as Tyrone Bartley and Luis Lopez. We would like to see an update on the status of that investigation. It does not appear, to my knowledge, that anyone has been suspended or otherwise reprimanded by IGSA. That is not like a 287G agreement. Orange County can decide and just tell ICE within 90 days, we are no longer going to abide by the IGSA. OCPS is using these Orange County tax dollars to host ICE detainers in Orange County Jail on 33rd last year, where allegedly there was only one ICE detainer. That has exploded to over 300 this year. We're not fully getting reimbursed. The per diem is at least less than $50 of what we're spending. So we are spending over $50 per day per ICE detainer. That is thousands of Orange County tax dollars being used to house people from other counties. There's a lot of instances without actual criminal record. We are then shipping off to other states in some of the worst conditions imaginable. These are families that we are tearing apart. Go into the actual jail, see the conditions that these people are living in, and talk to some of these families. Thank you for your time.
I'd like to say,
Hey Walker, how are you? I have Walker Smith IV from Legal Smith Consulting. He's a constitutional scholar, and he will be updating us on what's going on in our backyard, Orange County. He's very active in the hearings that we have. And tell us, I know that you've been working with a large team for a while, for various months. The video that you just saw was posted mid-July or so. And then we got hit with the news from July 15th to August 1st. So I want you to take me through what was going on, what you guys were doing, and then, you know, what happened.
Yeah, sure thing, Sonny. But first, thanks for having me back. And second, so we were it was a large organizational effort on the part of a lot of people. It was the Immigrants Are Welcome Here Coalition, which comprises a number of organizations in Orlando, including 5051, 5051 Latinos, the League of Women Voters were there to support, the Farm Workers Association. There were a lot of people that were a part of this. Because there's been a lot of things, like you said, in our backyard. For example, in Apopka, they've been detaining and they mostly being FHP, have been detaining a large number of people who they quote unquote suspect are immigrants. And we've seen a spike, and those numbers in the video actually are old. So it's actually more than a few $1,000,000 that's being spent every year now. If we project forward with how many people are being detained, it's not just a few hundred per day. We're getting to the point where thousands and thousands are being pushed through the Orange County jail. They're only supposed to be held for 72 hours, but some of them are getting, brought out and then brought back under new numbers just to restart the clock. And so what we were saying is we wanted Orange County to get out of this sort of disappearing machine. We don't want Orange County and our tax dollars to be spent on bringing people, from one jail to the next in this sort of conveyor belt to deportation. They're only supposed to have 72 hours, so why should they get to, ship them to our jail, fill our jail up, and put these people who aren't criminals in criminal detention? It doesn't make any sense. And so we asked for two separate things. The first was that they sort of get rid of the IGSA agreement. The IGSA also has the federal marshal aspect to it. And so they're not going to get rid of the whole thing. But there is the ICE portion of it that they unanimously actually agreed. They said, we are in consensus to phase out the ICE portion of the IGSA. And that was the main thing we were asking for. And the other thing that, we were asking for was that they look at the 287G agreement, because that one is different than the IGSA. It's mandated by the state. We have to do certain things under the agreement. But one of the things we don't have to do is transport detainees. Mm-hmm. And so Mayor Demings, without us even asking him to, this was his own initiative. He says, we are going to reject this amendment that they want us to do to transport people with county resources out of the county. Mm-hmm. And one of the things we learned is they actually do transport people within the county to hearings for the federal marshal program. So they do have some people that are trained to transport. The question is, they're 200 plus employees understaffed. Do they have the capacity to actually, drive people out of the county, particularly to places like the Everglades concentration camp? And Demings says the answer is no. He says that even if he signs this agreement, because in the agreement, there is a phrase may, right? Mm-hmm. That we saw at the last meeting on July 15th, as you referenced, they ultimately did have to sign the agreement, right? Not the July 15th meeting. This was what was the meeting date on that thing?
So the date that was signed was August 1st. And
August
the
1st.
Meeting, and then the meeting was like around mid-July, July 15th. So it didn't take that long, like 2 weeks.
Right. So as soon as they said we are going to start reviewing this ICE portion of the IGSA, DeSantis in Tallahassee started this massive pressure campaign. We saw 5 different letters on 5 different subjects come in within a matter of days. And it was, they're looking at Project 2050, which is one of the, county's infrastructure plans about zoning and things that are totally within their control that the state really shouldn't be questioning. Mm-hmm. They don't really have a good reason to question. Then we saw that they were going to send the Florida Doge down. And of course, the county welcomed that. And then they said that they were going to start removing the county commissioners. All of this within a span of a few days. And there was a couple other sort of attacks that I can't really recall off the top of my head, but there were so many pressure points that they wanted to push on. And on August 1st, Demings heard because DeSantis planned an impromptu sort of speech in International Drive that he and his cronies were coming down to Orlando. And allegedly, part of that plan may have been to remove some of the commissioners then and there on August 1st before the hearing, although there's not really been any concrete evidence of that. And so what we're seeing here is the agreement that ultimately was signed by Demings. And he says he signed it under duress and under, extreme pressure. And he only did it.
I have a few highlights here. It says, it was signed and dated agreement gives deputies the power and authority to detain and transport arrested aliens to ICE-approved facilities. And he said, yes, I signed the damn thing because we really had to. We were put in a tough spot. I can't let our entire board of county commissioners and myself be removed from office. He said, I say that with all sincerity because of the role, the responsibilities we have in this community to take care of our community and look out for our residents. I did not want to be in a position where the governor will have the opportunity to insert his minions in the roles to lead this county. I can tell you that I signed under protest and extreme duress, he said, but I think it was the right thing at the right time. And I have here to the Florida Attorney General James threatened civil and criminal penalties, including the potential removal of the mayor and the county commissioners from office if they did not sign. And he said, lastly, we still believe fundamentally that we should be reimbursed for any extraordinary costs that we have for holding ICE detainees or other federal inmates. But it doesn't say that. It's that, they say that there will be an ongoing negotiations for that.
Right. So yeah, there's a couple bits to this. So this piece that they're signing, it's not exactly the end of the battle. It's not the IGSA. So the IGSA has not necessarily been, fully signed on to yet.
Tell us what the IGSA is so our audience know what it is and because that way they have context.
Sure. So the Intergovernmental Service Agreement is one of the agreements that that the county has with the Immigration and Customs Enforcement. That's the one that's not mandatory. They call it the Memorandum of Understanding. There's also what's called a BOA, which is a different type of understanding. It's usually more restrictive, and it's not the kind we have with the county. And that was one of the arguments against getting rid of the ICE out of the Memorandum of Understanding, is it could ultimately result in us being forced into a worse agreement. But regardless, the other one is the 287G agreement. That is the agreement that the state says you must have. And so certain law enforcement entities must work with ICE. And so that one we can't really get rid of. And that's really what this transportation one has to do. It's part of that mandatory program. And so when the attorney general is making these threats, and by the way, he sent one of those letters to each and every one of the commissioners. These commissioners really were scared that somebody was going to come and legally arrest them because the governor does have the power to remove certain officials. It's unclear whether he has the removal power as he's saying he does here, because he's trying to say they didn't use best efforts to enforce the immigration policy, which he doesn't really have power to enforce immigration policy at a state level, A, and B, they were using their best efforts. They specifically said it was a safety and a health risk in order to transport people outside of the county using county resources, especially when we're already not being fully reimbursed. And that hasn't really changed. What's changed is sort of, the perspective of each of the commissioners, because as you said, now they're scared that people who were duly elected in this county are going to be stripped of their positions. People who voted for them are going to be stripped of their vote, and somebody who's not voting in their best interests are going to be put on the board. And that is entirely possible. And we did have people come to the commission who spoke up about that, and were scared that certain people who had their best interests for a long time might not be there tomorrow. And two of those commissioners are still scared because they actually voted no. And so certain legal avenues are being pursued, and even Mayor Demings has said this, that they are still not foregoing the possibility of a lawsuit. And it seems what their strategy is, they're waiting for that inevitable moment, because they've now just kicked the can, when the governor says, oh, you're just going to say no to our transport request? Because that agreement that we just saw, it says that they may transport. And that's a legal phrase. May doesn't mean must. It doesn't mean shall. It means you ask us, and if we can, we will. If we can't, we won't. At least that's what Mayor Demings is saying, right? He's saying that ICE will ask us nicely, and we will be able to say no. Well, isn't that what we just did with the agreement? Isn't that what y'all just did?
I didn't see the word may in there.
Let me hold on. I know it's here somewhere.
Hold on.
Our bound.
I'll leave it up a little bit so people can have the chance to read it. Yeah. It does say that it shall be in full force, all other provisions. So I don't. He probably made that up because he was scared. That's
No,
what I.
do you see that, Bart, there?
Where does it say May?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you could hear me. So the under that last bullet point, you look at the first paragraph, and it says only at the request of the ICE officials may an LEA transport one of the so it's under the section that refers to transportation, which is that last bullet point, and it's that first sub paragraph. That first section essentially says if there's a request from an ICE officer, the county may transport them. So what Mayor Demings is saying is at least how the county's interpreting that is ICE can ask nicely and we can say no, which doesn't sound like ICE, and it definitely doesn't sound like DeSantis. But I think that might be part of his legal strategy because now at least they can say they've signed the agreement. So if then tomorrow they come in and say, no, we're not going to transport because we don't have the money because it's a health and safety risk, and then DeSantis tries to remove him, that's a much stronger lawsuit. And I think that might be his strategy, but I don't necessarily think it's a good strategy to bow down and kowtow on the first time because it sort of sets a precedent that you're willing to just do whatever they say when the pressure comes on, you know? I think the time to file a lawsuit would have been, you know, right then and there if he tried to come and get you. Start assigning the Orange County sheriff folks as your deputies or bodyguards or something, you know, have protection if they try to come and remove you by force. Hire your own private security, do something, but don't run scared from a battle just because they challenge your own personal positions. And some of the commissioners even brought that point up. Is it a conflict of interest when you're considering your personal position over your duty to your constituents?
That's
And the general consensus was no, because they are also considering their duty to the people that voted for them, essentially saying that, look, these people voted for me, and if I'm putting myself in a position where I could get removed, it's not necessarily that I'm worried about me being removed. It's that I'm worried that their vote doesn't matter now, that their vote didn't count, and that somebody that doesn't care about them might be here. And so that point is well taken, and we can't discount that. But at the end of the day, there's a time to stand up, and I think that time was a little bit ago, and they missed it.
Yeah. Then we have this happening.
Oh yeah,
it's already like done. It's not gonna like what? This was August 8th, pausing for 14 days because they didn't follow certain procedures with environmental laws and things like that. And also people were there in inhumane conditions. And we're gonna play a video, and then we're gonna come back, and then we're gonna play another video, and it all relates to what's going on in the concentration internment camp.
I still haven't been able to visit my client who is currently being detained at Alligator Alcatraz. So guess what we decided to do? So we at U.S. Immigration Law Council have joined as a plaintiff on a case brought by ACLU and other organizations to sue the government. People detained at the facilities have limited access to their attorneys. I haven't been able to go see my client. The calls are not confidential. There's no place for us to do filings. We don't know where to file for a bond motion or any other type of relief, and it is completely chaotic. And during this entire period, there are just people sitting there in a hazard location in a tent in the middle of hurricane season in the Everglades. Something needs to be done about this. All we're asking for is for what is fair and to allow people to have access to their attorneys to be able to fight their case and allow them to have basic constitutional rights that allow them to go through the process and make their claim whether or not they can continue to stay in the United States or not. We are hoping that.
All right. So, is that, I mean, I know that you have other colleagues that perhaps concentrate more into the immigration portion of it. I mean, what has been your immediate experience? Because these are attorneys like driving, flying from other states, try to see their clients because they can't call. They can call them. They cannot find them. They don't have answers for their families. Do you have like what's the word on the ground?
Well, the word on the ground is kidnapping and disappearance machine. I mean, that's there's no other real word for it. At the end of the day, you know where your client is one day, and then all of a sudden they're shipped to a different part of the state, a different place, or sometimes a different state completely or a different country, and you don't get really any notice of it. And it's very difficult to track because of the short time frames. And a lot of these places, they're supposed to get people out within 72 hours. I don't think that's actually being followed at the internment camp, and I don't understand why. They must have a different time frame in their agreement. But for criminal charges, you can't really be detained for more than 24 hours if there's no criminal charge against you. So I don't understand how they can get away constitutionally with holding people indefinitely, which is essentially what they're doing. And that's the whole reason we had to have Guantanamo, is because you can't detain people indefinitely in the United States. But I mean, that's what's being done. They're detaining people indefinitely in situations and circumstances that are reminiscent, but oftentimes worse than the criminal circumstances that we house our criminal detainees in. So, for example, like you mentioned with Alligator Alcatraz, it's just not Alligator Alcatraz. It's the Everglades concentration camp. That's what it is. It's not a jail. These people don't have criminal charges. They're here on civil violations. And the most important thing to remember here is this is not a structure. It's not a building. They don't have real beds. These are tents and cages. This is how we keep dogs. This is not how we keep humans. They have about 10 to 20 people per cage, and there are porta potties out there that don't really work. They get backed up. The lights are either on all the time or out completely because of the weather, as you mentioned, that keeps going down through there. The cages always flood. The food has had maggots in it. There's 13 people there, or there's, I think, 13 people who have been on a hunger strike now for about 2 weeks because of the terrible conditions of the food. People are saying it is so bad that they're willing to fly back to whatever country the U.S. is willing to fly them to because they just rather get out of those circumstances.
But why not do that? Like, I'm sure that they rather be deported right away instead of being held for months and then get sick, getting infections. I have read of and seen video of people very thin. Someone got out of one of these places with like very thin arms, and they were trying to get the word out from their own account. And after this notice that they can't do anything for 14 days, we have this young lady, this brave young lady, travel from one state to the other to do.
Hi, my name is Taylor. We have an update on Alligator Alcatraz detainees being transported out of the facility. Some of them are showing back up on the ICE locator. Many of them are in El Paso, Texas, at the Enhanced Hardened facility. And there is an urgent need for pro bono lawyers with experience with this facility. I am being told that acting as quickly as possible is of the utmost importance because they're trying to move people out of there as soon as possible. So if anyone knows anyone who's in El Paso or in Texas who has experience with this facility and can help the several people that I'm talking to who need help, please reach out to me directly, either on here, on my Instagram that's in my link tree, or DM me for my signal. Thank you so much.
That is social worker for the people. She drove from Michigan to be able to be of assistance and aid, to offer support. And she's been there for a really long time. I can't hear you now.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, I can hear you now. So
There we
so she traveled from another state, and she's a social worker.
Wow.
And
No, that's really impressive.
people. Yes, she has people that need help. She got the contact information, and that's her handle. You can anyone that is watching this, the social worker on Instagram, and I also posted her video on my Facebook page. So if anyone's seeing this that want to take a few pro bono cases here and there, I know that it's overwhelming because there's a lot of people. She's there. She has a contact of at least 3 or 4 people that need help. I do have a question for you specifically, Walker. What is the difference? Because I had a few lawyers here of like a lawyer that only focus on immigration and a constitutional lawyer. And in what ways can you use either or?
Sure. So really, there's 3 main categories of lawyers people in these situations need to know about. There's the criminal lawyer, there's the lawyer who focuses on immigration, and then there's the civil lawyer, or the constitutional lawyer in this case. So the criminal lawyer you're going to need if they actually have filed any sort of criminal charge against you, whether that's a federal or a state criminal charge. Even if it's just resisting, you may need a criminal lawyer, and they're required to give that to you for free. So that's your public defender typically.
But for protesters, for example, that are unjustly charged for just standing there, for example.
Exactly. And that's one thing that even it doesn't matter what your crime is, you will be guaranteed constitutionally a criminal lawyer. And so those PDs, they are typically folks who specialized in criminal law, but they don't necessarily have all of the knowledge necessary for a civil case or an immigration case per se. They may have some knowledge on those, and they'll advise you to the best of their ability. But as lawyers, we're not ethically allowed to sort of advise outside of our bounds of knowledge. So, for example, for me, I don't tend to give immigration advice. I don't tend to give criminal advice. In terms of the immigration cases, I can say what generally I've seen. For example, folks who have more than 1 reentry and an order of deportation, those cases are a lot harder to fight, and it's harder to find attorneys to take those cases. And to answer your earlier question, some people in those circumstances, especially the ones that I've dealt with, have been more willing to sort of take that flight and take that offer because they know they're not going to win that immigration case. They can fight it as hard as they want, but they've already got an order of deportation. They've already got 1 reentry. There's not a whole lot the immigration attorney can do. Now, people who've been through the valid process, they have their, the work permit, stuff like that. That's where you're looking for a civil attorney, right? Because you've been given permission by the state in some regard.
I read that there are many DACA recipients detained there.
Right. And so because the way DACA was done as an executive program, it didn't have a lot of protection to it. It meant the next president could sort of come and do away with it, which really is terrible. And the same with the people who applied through CBP-1. They had their application pending, and there was a deferment, meaning that they weren't going to be deported while that application was pending. And then they got issued work permits, some of them by the Trump administration, right? Because they're not cross-referencing. And so what you end up with is people who've relied on this permission whose families are now being torn apart. And it's just like you saw in the earlier video. To a kid, it doesn't matter why you're taking their mom or dad away. All they know is one day they show up and mom or dad's not home anymore. And it shouldn't matter where somebody's born. That's not okay. In America, we don't have, we're not supposed to have a state police that goes and snatches people from their houses and jobs and hearings, just for trying to be here. It's not the way we were supposed to be, I don't think.
Yeah, and I mean, we know, and I've only found this out after the Obama administration, that he had the highest deportation rate, and it was quiet. I didn't see no videos. Every time I open video after video, people being snatched, people being taken, video after video, a floodgates of videos. Every day, Univision, Telemundo, every day every day. They have a story every day. We're not saying that they should not go back because they're here illegally, because I know there's a consensus from both sides that if you're here illegally, you get caught, you are given a hearing, right? Because it is for everyone to fight your case, and then you can be deported. But what is happening here is like, you see these agents like breaking people's car doors, like dragging people on the floor. Like, I never seen anything like this in my life.
And I think that's the difference. That's the point. It's not necessarily about how many, it's about how. It's about the tactics that are being used. It used to be that you had to respect people's due process and their constitutional rights. We understood that, it doesn't matter if you're a citizen or not. You still have rights in this country. And even in Florida, Florida guarantees the right to a free education to non-documented people who are living here. The schools aren't even allowed to ask your immigration status. So it's very disheartening to see that the state police force now does not regard the Constitution as highly as it once did, and is being used against civilians and citizens and non-citizens alike. People who don't necessarily have citizenship don't deserve to be mistreated any more than citizens. And so it doesn't matter whether you have a green card, or you're a citizen natural born, or whether you're not a citizen. Nobody deserves to be dragged out of their car, beat up, or thrown in jail. There's other ways that we can deport people without putting them in cages like this.
Yeah.
And there was reporting on the cages down in Texas in the Obama years too. I remember they had the reporting on, it was like the tinfoil blankets and stuff that they gave them.
Yeah.
I think that was I don't remember if it was the Biden or the Obama years, but they did have some reporting on it. You're right, it wasn't as prevalent, but man, they weren't being treated like this. We didn't have internment camps to this level in the Obama years.
It's just cruel, because
not hurricane season in Florida.
Yeah, I know, because just they just put them back. They're probably better back home, instead of having, like, I have seen and heard of people being there since March. What are they doing there since March? They should have been already, somewhere in Latin America or the Caribbean or something.
Well, some of them are from here. That's the problem. Is some of them, and the folks who have criminal charges, they can't leave. They have to stay, and they have to finish out their criminal cases. But there's people there. I have one down there who's got a license, a Florida license, and a work permit, and he wants to fight his charges. But I've lost contact with him down there, and the 3 other siblings that he had, they've already flown back to Guatemala.
Yeah. It's better to just, take them where they need to go instead of just keeping them there, especially now that hurricane season is coming. But now, like this young lady was saying, they're being, right now as we speak, after this order from the judge, they're being currently transported to Texas. So as an attorney, what happens then?
Well, yeah, we've had reports that large numbers of people are being moved out of the Everglades facilities, which is good because hurricane season is coming. But we also don't necessarily know why, whether it's a permanent move or a temporary move. But when they go to other states, for attorneys, it means our subpoena power is weakened significantly. We can't really force them to provide us with certain documents. We can't force them to present certain people. It renders our ability to pursue legal cases essentially, nil. We can't do much. It makes us powerless.
Now I have another section here that other things that are going on.
An appeals court denied the Trump administration's request for ICE to detain people based solely on race, language, occupation, or location. Here's what we know. The Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled Friday that a restraining order preventing immigration agents in Los Angeles from using factors such as a person's race, job, language, or presence at a specific location can remain in place, denying the federal government's request to overturn the decision. The temporary restraining order was issued by a lower court judge on July 12th after a lawsuit from immigration advocacy groups accused the Trump administration of conducting indiscriminate immigration stops and detentions in Southern California. The order stated that there was a mountain of evidence to suggest that ICE tactics were violating the Constitution. Advocacy groups claimed that ICE had detained multiple people who told agents they were citizens, arresting them based solely on their presence at locations such as bus stops, the fact that they were employed at establishments such as car washes, the color of their skin, or their English proficiency level. The Trump administration argued that the restraining order hindered their enforcement of immigration law. Legally, I think it's appropriate to use the factors for reasonable suspicion, an attorney for the federal government argued in court. The appeals court said Friday that the 4 enumerated factors at issue, apparent race or ethnicity, speaking Spanish or speaking English with an accent, particular location, and type of work, even when considered together, describe only a broad profile and do not demonstrate reasonable suspicion for any particular stop. Judge Jennifer Song stated that in an area with a large Latino population such as LA, the factors cannot possibly weed out those who have undocumented status and those who have documented legal status. She then asked representatives for the federal government, what is the harm to being told not to do something that you claim you're already not doing? Mayor Karen Bass called Friday's ruling a victory for the rule of law and for the city of Los Angeles. An appeals court denied the
So what happens, because se pasaron, perdóname la palabra, ese restraining order por donde no pasa el sol.
No, claro.
They're still doing it anyways. Like, what do you do in that case?
Bueno, ya tenemos una regla ahora del corte que dice básicamente que no se puede emparrar la gente solo por raza, pero tuvimos también ese mismo regla por tantos años, ¿verdad? Antes fue como manejando cuando negro y ahora es como manejando cuando latino. Y entonces, eventualmente la policía pueden decir por cualquier gente, porque usted está aquí. Entonces, no, de todo el mundo se puede emparrar sin razón. Y eso es, that's really the point, you know, is they can't stop somebody just because of who they look like or who they sound like or where they're at. And that's been the rule for years. And it's great that, you know, the Supreme Court decided not to intervene when the lower court actually upheld the rule for once. But, you know, to your point, they're still doing it. And what we need to do now is have lawsuits in every other city that looks like that. I mean, Kissimmee is a good example, but Apopka is really where we're seeing a lot of these detentions. They're going after specific locations in Apopka in predominantly Latino areas where they think they can find people who happen to look Latino. And it doesn't matter whether they think they're citizens or non-citizens. They're just stopping people because they happen to look Latino or because they happen to speak Spanish or, like they said, speak English with an accent. And that's not right. You know, in the U.S., you have a constitutional freedom of movement. And that's really being infringed when they say you can't be certain places if you look a certain type of way or sound a certain type of way. It's repugnant to the Constitution. And it's, quite frankly, absurd that we should even have to question it.
Yeah. So if you, let's say that if you either, you could be a citizen or you could, you know, not be, and you have this restraining order during this lapse of time, you know, what would you do as a lawyer to protect the client if they were detained during this restraining order, because they're doing it anyway in Los Angeles? Right. I don't have any hopes here in Florida because Florida does everything that Trump says. So in other places, you know, that maybe the courts are like, oh, you can't do that. And then they do it anyway.
You still got to sue. You know, I leave it up to every individual. I'm not going to tell anybody what's the right choice to make, you know, in any circumstance. I'm going to always leave that up to, you know, whoever's making the call. It's their life. They got to make that call. But, you know, I'll tell them what factors are at play. And in this, you know, particular circumstance, you have to deal with the fact. It's difficult to say, you know, because
if they are like, okay, this happened to me, what items should I bring you to, prove that I was stopped by, I
Right.
don't know,
So,
because I was talking to my friend and I
well,
have an accent.
my point is I don't want to speak on the portion of the restraining order itself, because there's going to be specific remedies in the case of the restraining order that are only applicable to the people in LA. That's going to be based on California law, which I don't really know anything about. So what I'll say is this: if you're in generally a circumstance where you've already got a restraining order imposed like that, it's much easier for you to then go sue the government and say they're in violation of that restraining order. But what I would say is, even if you don't have that restraining order, you could still file a civil suit. If you think the only reason you were stopped is because of your race, if you think the only reason they stopped your car is because it had Latino folks in it, or because you were speaking Spanish on the sidewalk, or it was something that was pretextual, if you think your stop was pretextual, that's the circumstance to sue. It's not necessarily, these big class action lawsuits. It's what happens to individuals, because I can take that one individual's case and put it in front of a jury, and we can ask a jury of peers, does this sound like something that, was reasonable suspicion? Or do you think they just stopped him because of what he looked like and sounded like? And that's really, I think, where the focus needs to be on individual circumstances in each one of their cases. When they have a pretextual stop, documenting that, making sure they know who the arresting officer was, and then looking for a civil attorney in addition to whatever other attorneys, whether that's criminal and immigration. But a civil attorney like me, we can let you know whether or not there's a claim against the arresting facility. And with Florida Highway Patrol essentially being deputized as baby ICE in Florida, I mean, there's so many pretextual stops going on that it's ridiculous. So I wouldn't discount the opportunity that Florida could very well have its own restraining order, especially in Apopka, or if we start to see spikes in Kissimmee.
So whether there's a formal restraining order or not, you still have the option to seek a civil attorney.
Correct. Everybody should seek a consult if they're ever in a circumstance where they're unsure. If they think their stop might have been pretextual, even if they don't know, if they're like, look, I can't tell you yes or no, it was pretextual, they should call a civil attorney, because the consult is usually free. And, the civil attorney will sit down and talk with you at least 5 to 10 minutes, and you tell them what happened to you, generally speaking, broad strokes. And the civil attorney will tell you, okay, I think there's a case here, or no, I don't think there's a case there. They may ask you to fill out some more paperwork. But folks like me, I got English, Spanish paperwork, and others have Creole paperwork as well. So there's all kinds of civil attorneys' offices that are out here and ready to help, that are rearing to fight back against this sort of government overreach against people.
Even if you are undocumented and this happens to you, you're stopped because of the color of your skin or your accent, you still need a civil attorney, not immigration.
Correct. It doesn't matter if their suspicions turn out to be valid that you didn't have documentation. What matters is why they stopped you. Did they have a valid reason to stop you, or did they make one up? Right? Did they say, "Oh, your light was out, but it wasn't really out"? Did they say you ran a stop sign you didn't actually run? Did they make something up in order to stop you because of the way you looked? Then that's a pretextual stop. It doesn't matter if they ultimately can even convict you of a crime. At the end of the day, the stop itself may have been a violation of your civil rights. And so you always want to ask, do I have a case?
Okay. So if they stop you, you ask them, why am I being stopped?
What's your reasonable suspicion for stopping me? Why am I being stopped? And if they can't say anything other than, well, you look like you might be illegal. Well, what does that mean? You know what I mean? It's at the end of the day, if they just start asking you for your ID, gentlemen, you have ID, or ladies and gentlemen, do you have ID? Why are you asking me that? Well, we suspect there might be illegals in the car. Well, what's your reasonable suspicion? You know what I mean? And those are the types of things that you can say if you're bold. But honestly, as an attorney, I don't recommend you say anything. Just tell them we don't answer questions. And if you have a red card, hand that to them. That's the better way to handle that.
All right. You don't have to give them your ID, or what do you recommend?
The driver of the vehicle, if they're driving a vehicle in the state of Florida, must present an identification that, or some sort of credentials to be driving. No one else in the vehicle has to, unless that officer can justify a reasonable suspicion of a crime. And undocumented status in the United States is not a crime, no matter how much Florida tries to say it is.
And it's a civil infraction, like we mentioned so many times before, but I keep seeing those things online. It's like and they keep repeating it over and over, even in my comments, like, only citizens have due process. Only citizens get, access to the right to have access to attorney. Only citizens,
Totally untrue. In Florida, undocumented folks have the right to workers' compensation, even if they've been illegally hired. And that's been case law for over 60 years. The education department in Florida in 1980 signed a consent agreement that they will not ask for documentation status and will provide free education to everybody here. And that's been in place, 1980, so 50 years now? I mean, the state of Florida has historically protected its undocumented immigrants because we understand that they're the backbone of our society here. I mean, without our undocumented workers in this state, we could have never built our economy as big as we could have, and we could have never built certain cities as big as we could have. I mean, Plant City rests on undocumented labor as an entire industry. And it's, our tourism industries are everything Florida is brought to you by undocumented immigrants who have been here working the whole time, many of whom have been paying taxes. And the fact that they're using the tax system to target those people, that's ridiculous. You're going after the ones who contribute first? No, something is wrong here.
You have higher hopes than me for Florida because I come from Massachusetts. I'm like, what did I do to myself? I just came here because of the warm weather.
Not hopes. I have demands. I won't live in a society that doesn't, acknowledge, the contributions, man. I mean, we've always protected undocumented immigrants. It's just, I want to continue what we've done before.
But again, the sanctuary cities are being hit harder because I see that in Massachusetts, what's going on.
Yeah.
Although, here in Florida, I actually encountered ICE like walking distance from my house, and I posted the video, and I did an alert for my community to, I put the time, I recorded it. I didn't get out of my vehicle. I mean, what kind of safety guards would you tell people to do? I always tell you to record, don't interfere. I mean, you have other tips for, citizens that are trying to be good stewards and trying to protect their community. Can you share something for us?
Know your comfort level. Everyone's got a different comfort level. Some people are okay being the person that jumps in the middle of the arresting officer and the commissioner that's about to be taken in on DeSantis's orders. Some people are not okay with that and are only okay donating to the cause, whether that be diapers or food or whatever. But contribute in whatever way you are able to whatever causes in this fight that you can. There's so many different ways to contribute. For example, 5051 and the coalition, they have different organizations. There's the Mutual Aid Coalition, for example, that strictly focuses on directly impacted families and getting them assistance that they need, right? Like food and necessities, cribs for a newborn. There's other departments that focus on, community events, outreach, and there's others that just need graphic designers to help us with the flyers. There's so many ways. Any skills that you have are useful, and they can be used to help this cause. So if you feel in any way that you want to help, whether that's driving like that young girl did to another state, right?
Yes,
or just representing somebody, in a case if you're an attorney, or honestly just showing up to a meeting and being a body at a protest, right? Like saying, hey, we're not okay with this, or to a board meeting at your local board and saying, hey, what are you doing about this? To the point where 2 board members in Orlando and Orange County stand up for immigrant rights, even if it's not the whole board yet. I mean, we'll get
Yeah,
there.
I saw people in the protest passing down waters and snacks and things like that. And talking about protests, I don't know if you have experienced this because you and I made on TikTok. All the suppression that is going on right now, and it's driving me absolutely crazy. I've been trying my best. I took a screenshot of all these creators in different cities, Los Angeles, Portland, New York, Phoenix, and DC, that are actively recording the protest. And as you can see there, our friends, South Florida 50501 reposted this, and now we're forced as activists to choose hashtags music festivals to be able to find this, because it's suppressed. Right now, you can only find information about these protests in the local news in their respective cities. You won't see it a nationwide story about this, which is, and I did go and looked online, like, why don't I know about this? I was like a little bit skeptical, because you do have to be skeptical with everything that you see online. So I did go at each city, and I looked information. There was nothing nationwide. And then I went to the local news. And as a matter of fact, everything that they're documenting is real, is true. You can go follow them. If you have a TikTok account. If you do not have a TikTok account, then you can use the hashtag Music Festival and then add your city and see what comes up. Also, today I got this. I couldn't watch videos. They did a community guideline update. I couldn't open my app today.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, great. I also had a strike. So I don't even have 700 people there. I'm like, all right. I had 3 of my favorite creators lost their accounts. They came back, and I've been trying to track them down. Like, I never had this experience before. Now, let me tell you.
What? You've never been censored on TikTok? That's actually what I was going to say, is this is nothing new for us. You remember before this, it was winter boots. That was what we had to say, because they were censoring our...
I'm saying
Yeah.
I've never been censored before this administration, because, let me clarify. Because I was a student, I came in during the Iraq War, and I was, protesting against the Iraq War.
Right.
I went to Boston College, and our speaker was Condoleezza Rice. We had snipers on the roof of our school, and we were protesting as students. None of us got arrested. None of us went to prison. And we could communicate, with each other. That was during the transition of Facebook. It was not even near what it is today. But yeah. I was like, I never experienced this type of suppression in my life.
It's a different world now. We see what's going on in the real world in our cameras in 4K, and it's disturbing and motivating people to a wide degree. I mean, think about, for example, it's a little off topic, but the Palestine issue. I mean, we weren't able to talk about that for decades until very recently, when we've started getting videos of it on TikTok and on our phones. So TikTok has really been a sort of a mobilization machine. And if we harken back, you can look at the Vietnam War as sort of the first example of this, where people started to see the images come back on their TV screens. And that's where you really had that big movement from the 70s of, oh no, let's, maybe we shouldn't be in Vietnam. Why are we killing these people? Or in the case of Israel, why are we sponsoring the killing of all of these people, or the takeover of certain areas? It really makes people reflect on who they are. And I think that's part of the danger, right? That's part of why the US got involved in TikTok, because it was sort of one of those free, uncensored, not necessarily uncensored, it was still censored, but it wasn't as censored as it has been since it's been in the spotlight. I do feel ever since it's become this sort of spotlighted, thing, it's lost a lot of its journalistic integrity, as it were. Now it
Well,
is.
journalism is changing. A lot of journalists have left TV or they have been fired for criticizing the administration. I mean, thank God, I'm from Dominican Republic, and my grandmother, she remembers the dictator Trujillo, and during that time, and I thank God that I wasn't like born in a dictatorship, but I have read enough. I mean, I carry this little book with me in my purse. This is on tyranny, 20 lessons from the 20th century by Timothy Snyder. He's a Holocaust historian. And the first thing, I mean, these are all the steps, and I went through this, chapter by chapter on my TikTok, trying to explain to people. The first thing, what does it say that happened? Do not obey in advance. The first lesson in the book. Do not obey in advance. We have that happen. We have that happen. Obey in advance. The worst thing that you can do. But then, I always tell everyone that feels sad and desolated and without hope, like you have no idea how many people are fighting, because when I leave my house and take my kids to school and I do my work and all this kind of stuff, I do update myself at night, but I see people behind the scenes like you.
No, I'm just one small person doing what I can.
Showing up. I mean, that's half of the battle. Show up, go to the hearings. You have a skill. You can read, documents like this and be like, hey, they're lying. They're lying to the teeth. Read the document.
Right.
You're lying to the media. Go read the document. This is what it means. You know what I mean? Imagine if we didn't have that type of support. And I am teaching my children right now. I went to the public library and I took out 3 books that talk about segregation, racism. And my kid is 8, and I'm teaching him about history, everything early. I have all of my books here. I have my library right here. And I'm like, man, like, people need to wake up. This is not about, at this point, it's not even about a political, policies. You know how it was 20 years before. It's like you fight about politics and then you eat dinner, and then it was all over, But this is
about a standard of living and about what kind of people we want to be. This is about the soul. This is about our karma. It's about way more than just the decisions in front of us today. This is about what we're willing to tolerate to our fellow human beings. And that's why I talk, it's all connected. Like you said, it's history repeating itself. But that's why I talk about the Palestine conflict, because as a native, I see that as just a repeat of what they did to my native ancestors, with the Nakba being the Trail of Tears. And, a lot of it is just history repeating itself in today's America with the internment camps. Whether that's looking back on what we did to the Japanese folks during the war with the internment camps, or looking back at how the police are treating Latino people, which is exactly what they've been doing to Black people for decades. I mean, since Jim Crow and the new era of a different kind of slavery through imprisonment. And even if you look at the people who are at these the camps down in the Everglades and other detention facilities for people who aren't criminals, it's interesting. They are also being forced to work. Well, the Constitution of the United States says that slavery is only permissible as punishment for a crime. So if immigration is not, if being here as an undocumented person is not a crime, and they're then forcing these people to work without paying them a minimum wage, I mean, you connect those dots. It's history repeating itself, but it's on steroids, the way that it's being done. And I think the time to act was yesterday, but the next best time to act is now. Do whatever you can to help.
So with that, we finalize our session today. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming and being here with us live. I will be distributing this in Spanish. Voy a hacer en español también para que sepan lo que estamos hablando el día de hoy. Así
Y
que
disculpe que yo no hable en español. Yo puedo hablar español también, pero me olvidé para hablar en Spanglish.
it's
Discúlpame.
okay because I wanted, you know, everything to flow and I had, you know, everything all set. And then it's like, oh, I don't want to have a short circuit in my brain. Well, I hope that all of you have a great weekend, and we'll be posting more information. I'm sure that you will come on here again to let us know what's next, what happened.
I'll keep y'all updated.
Please keep us updated, and we will be there. Send us all the information, you know, whether on WhatsApp or TikTok, if we still have TikTok, but we'll keep we'll keep each other connected because I don't even know what I did wrong that I had a strike. But anyways.
Oh. Associated with one too many good people, I guess.
Thank you so much for being here, Walker.
Thanks for having me. It's a great
Bye,
pleasure.